The bomb drops. In the first milliseconds, a fireball hotter than the surface of the sun expands outward. Within a mile of the blast, everything, buildings, cars, people, is vaporized instantly. No warning, no survival. Then the shockwave. It travels faster than sound, flattening reinforced concrete like cardboard, shattering windows hundreds of miles away. Third-degree burns reach anyone within 10 miles who makes the mistake of looking toward the light. And then the mushroom cloud rises. That iconic shape isn't just spectacle. It's superheated air carrying radioactive debris miles into the atmosphere. Within the first hour, fallout begins raining down on everything downwind. If you're not in the blast zone, your instinct is to run. But running into the open may be the worst decision you can make. The first minutes after a nuclear strike aren't just destructive. They set off a chain of consequences that will last for decades. In the days immediately following a nuclear detonation, the invisible threat becomes just as deadly as the blast itself: radiation. Fallout particles settle on soil, water, skin, and lungs. Acute radiation sickness sets in for those exposed: nausea, vomiting, hair loss, and in severe cases, complete organ failure within days. Hospitals, if they're still standing, are overwhelmed almost immediately. Infrastructure collapses fast, power grids fail. Water treatment plants go offline. Communications go dark. For survivors, the priority is shelter in place. Thick walls, no windows, sealed doors. The most dangerous period for fallout lasts roughly 48 to 72 hours, but residual radiation lingers for weeks. Food and water become critical concerns almost immediately. Looting and panic begin in cities outside the blast zones. Governments scramble to respond if they still can. These first few days filter the population into two groups: those who know what to do and those who don't. Here's where it gets truly global. A large-scale nuclear exchange wouldn't just destroy the cities it targets, it would alter the entire planet's climate. Massive firestorms triggered by the blast send billions of tons of black soot and smoke into the upper atmosphere, far beyond where rain can wash it out. This forms a dense blanket around the Earth, blocking sunlight. Scientists call it nuclear winter. Temperatures across the globe could drop by 10 to 20 degrees Celsius within weeks. Growing seasons collapse, crops fail, not just in the countries at war, but everywhere. The Amazon, the wheat fields of the American Midwest, the rice paddies of Southeast Asia, all plunged into cold and darkness. Countries that never saw a single bomb could face mass starvation. Studies suggest a full-scale nuclear war could threaten the food supply of over 5 billion people. The war ends, the dying doesn't. When the systems that hold civilization together break down, what's left? In the months following a nuclear war, governments in affected regions lose the ability to function. Supply chains, the invisible backbone of modern life, are gone. No fuel, no medicine, no food distribution. Rural areas fare better at first, but urban populations face catastrophic die-offs from starvation, disease, and violence. Historical parallels give us clues. The Black Death, the collapse of ancient civilizations under climate stress. But nothing in human history compares to this scale. Gangs and militias fill the power vacuum. Borders dissolve. Refugee crises dwarf anything seen in modern history. International institutions, the UN, trade organizations, financial systems become functionally meaningless. What emerges isn't one unified chaos. It's thousands of isolated pockets of humanity, each trying to rebuild something from nothing. The social contract, the agreement we all silently make to live together, shatters completely. The bombs stop falling, the mushroom clouds dissipate, but the biological damage is just beginning. Long-term radiation exposure raises cancer rates dramatically. Leukemia, thyroid cancer, lung cancer, for generations. We know this from the survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where elevated cancer rates persisted for decades. Children born after a nuclear war in affected regions face higher rates of genetic mutation, developmental disorders, and immune deficiencies. The soil remains contaminated for years. Certain isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90 have half-lives measured in decades, meaning they stay in the food chain for a very long time. Animals absorb them, plants absorb them. Humans eat both. The Chernobyl exclusion zone gives us a small preview. 40 years later, parts of it are still uninhabitable. Now imagine that. but across hundreds of thousands of square miles. The war may be over in days, the medical crisis lasts centuries. Does civilization survive? History suggests that humans are extraordinarily resilient. Even after catastrophic collapses, communities reorganize. Agriculture restarts, trade reemerges. Knowledge preserved in books, in memory, in the people who survive eventually seeds something new. But a full-scale nuclear war would be different from anything before it. The timeline for recovery isn't years, it's generations. Chernobyl's wildlife began recovering within decades when humans left. Nature, as it turns out, is more resilient than we are. Some regions, those far from blast zones with arable land and clean water, could become the seeds of new societies. Parts of the southern hemisphere, largely untargeted, may fare better than the north. But the world that rebuilds won't look like ours. It will be smaller, slower, and shaped entirely by scarcity. The question nuclear war forces us to ask isn't just, could we survive? It's what are we willing to do to make sure we never have to find out?